Hey y'all, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to check out another one of my videos. If you're new around here, hello and welcome. My name is Katie Marie and I am a big lover of eyeshadow palettes. It's definitely my favorite aspect of makeup, but specifically when it comes to eyeshadow palettes, I love green eyeshadow palettes. And if you're not new around here, I know this comes as no surprise. This is nothing new for you guys, but I love green eyeshadow palettes and it has been a hot minute since I've talked about all the green eyeshadow palettes that I have in my collection, and I've gotten requests for it fairly recently, so I'm finally sitting down to do my green eyeshadow palette collection, and I'm going to rank all the green eyeshadow palettes that I have in my collection. It is a big ordeal. I have a ton of palettes down here that I have not counted fully, but there's a lot of palettes to go over, and we're just going to be diving right in here very shortly. I just want to throw out some parameters that for me, a green eyeshadow palette is going to mean anything when I open it and I'm just overwhelmed by all the green options and it just kind of speaks to me as being a great green palette. That's what I included in today's video, because a lot of green palettes that I have in my collection are like half and half. They're like half green with another color added to it, or maybe a couple different colors, but the green is overwhelming and it's kind of the main focal point of the palette. So I included them in this video. So basically I opened each and every palette that I have back here, and if I ever opened it, I was like, oh, look at all those greens, I put it in this collection. So you're gonna see a lot of palettes that have a variety of colors along with the green, but overwhelmingly the palettes and the color stories, the themes have that greenness to them, or the focus on the green, or whenever I open it, I see a green eyeshadow palette, and hence why it is in today's video. So if you're excited for that, let's roll the intro and get right into it. Before we get into the nitty-gritty, I actually have some exciting news in that this video is sponsored by Ana Luisa. So I'm partnering with Ana Luisa once again to share with you guys some of their pieces and just a little bit about the brand if you are brand new to them. And I am a huge fan of Ana Luisa. Very excited to be working with them for the last couple months. And today I'm going to be sharing with you guys a little bit of information about their Valentine's Day sale, as well as some new pieces that came into my collection. Ana Luisa, if you are new to them, is a very sustainably focused jewelry brand. They focus on trying to be as sustainable and like low impact to the planet as possible. They use recycled material whenever possible when making their jewelry, and they also focus on doing small batches when it comes to their jewelry, which I think is a really great way to reduce waste so they don't have an excess amount of styles that maybe weren't very popular. They keep it pretty small, and they release collections, I think every week, maybe on a Friday, I can't remember exactly, but they release small batches at a time and they cycle through their collections. So I really do like that about them. I have some really unique pieces, very beautiful pieces, and very well-made pieces, in my personal opinion, and what I've experienced with jewelry. Their pieces have stood up really well. I've owned some of them for well over a year, wearing them every single day, and they always hold up really, really nicely. What I have on today is probably one of my favorite sets. I got this layered necklace set. I believe it's a Michelle. I'll put it on the screen here along with the price, but I got it months ago. Absolutely love their layering pieces. I think their layering pieces are my favorite thing, because especially if you wait for a sale and pick it up during a sale, you get, more than one necklace that you can either wear alone, you can mix them up, you can mix the layering sets. I have so much fun kind of taking the sets and mixing them up and wearing them in different occasions. But I really do like this set with the little medallion here, and they came out with earrings to match the set. So when I saw that, I was like, oh, I have to pick up the earrings. And these are actually pretty big earrings for me. When it comes to Ana Luisa, I feel like they focus on a very minimalistic look to their jewelry, which I do like, especially for the everyday. But I also like to go big sometimes, especially for special events, and these earrings are a decent size and they're not too big to make it uncomfortable for me to wear. I really do enjoy them, so I'm super excited to have these earrings that really go and tie into this necklace set. I'm really excited about these. I should have worn these for today's video, but I was so excited about the set, I decided to put this one on. But look at these. These are green earrings. They're so very cute. These are called the Hannah Liquid Green, and they're just really cute, little kind of a green wave to them. I'll be sticking close up so you guys can see, but they're really nice, and they're a bit of a bigger earring. I love that the color is green. You guys know I love green, so I'm sure I'll be able to incorporate this pretty easily into my looks anytime I'm wearing a green look or a green eye or green shirt, whatever, what have you. And then I also got this necklace, which I was so excited for, and I feel like it's such a great necklace to offer around Valentine's Day because it says mama on it, and I think it's just so very pretty. I've already worn it once, but I had to put it back in the little carton just to show you guys. I think it is really, really pretty. So simple, but if you're a mama, you guys know that word has such a special place to be a mama to a young child or young children. It is such a joy and it's like the best job ever. So I think this necklace is just so very pretty. And especially as I said, you know, as we're coming up on Valentine's Day and then Mother's Day is coming up, this would be a great necklace to pick up if you wanted to gift it to your mother for Mother's Day, and you could pick it up now during a sale. And last up is this little earring set. I got it kind of thinking my daughter would enjoy wearing it, but also for me, I think it's really pretty. It should hug my ear just perfectly. And it's just really cute having all the little detail down the side with the little diamonds and the sparkles to them. They're just so very sparkly. And yeah, great little kind of like every day you could easily put them on, and they're earrings that, like, for me personally, I would put them on and wear for weeks at a time because I would forget they're in there, but they always, you know, look pretty in my ear, and always make sure I have like some type of jewelry in my ear because I'm not the type of person to change up my jewelry or put my earrings in every day. I put a pair in and usually that's what I wear for a while unless it's a special occasion. So those are all the new pieces that I picked up from Ana Luisa, and as I said, they are doing a sale right now. I'll put it on the screen, but it should be buy one get one 40% off. So as I said, it's a great time to buy for gifts in my opinion because you can buy a couple different sets, buy one get one 40% off. I always take a look at the last chance section where things are already at a discount because as I said, they kind of phase them out and they don't keep stocking it for long. So a lot of times I can find really great pieces there. But yeah, I will have a link down in my description box. It is more of a tracking link so that Ana Luisa, who sponsored this video, can see how much traffic I send their way. So if you want to check out their jewelry or just browse it to see if there's anything interesting that you might want to pick up for someone or for yourself for Valentine's Day, the link is down below and I do appreciate it if you want to use that. So now with all that said, let's go ahead and dive into ranking my green palettes, which can I just say, this was so hard, but let's get into it. Alright, per usual, I do not trust my counting abilities when it comes to counting in the moment because I feel like every time I've done that, I always miscount. So on the screen will be the number we are at, but we're going to start at the bottom per usual. I always like to work it up to the number 1 palette because it just builds excitement because as I go, I start from my least favorite and then it just kind of just continues to amp up as I talk about the best palettes in my collection, or in this case, the best green palettes in my collection, which are the best palettes in my collection. But anyway, first up, this palette I almost didn't include, but it's kind of a green palette. It's the Mints palette, or the Mints Quad, I should say, the Rebel Mints Quad from Juvia's Place. These two are kind of greeny, and even the mint is very kind of that pastel green leaning. So I was like, you know what? I opened it and I thought of green. It's not a grungy green, it's not a deep green, but it's still that minty green and whatnot. So I was like, okay, I'll throw it in here. And it's definitely getting the very tail end of it because I'm not a big fan of this. This is a quad I would like to incorporate into looks, but using it on its own, I wasn't a big fan. It didn't give me enough depth. Even though the colors, like I said, each of the shades on their own are great. I just would need to use it with something else. But yeah, that came in at the very last. Next up is going to be Colourpop's Star Wars The Mandalorian palette. This little palette right here is super cute, but the color story is just kind of why I'm putting it so low because yes, it's a green palette, but they're very soft, almost kind of minty greens like we just talked about, and also a lot of brown in there, and even like the shimmers that are green, they're a very, very light type of green. So when you do looks, it's all around a very soft type of greeny look, unless you really focus on just the deeper shadows and whatnot. But overall, it's just not as green as I like to have my looks, so hence why it's coming in very low in this countdown. But it is still a green palette that I have in my collection because it's a cute green palette. Next up is going to be the OFRA, what is this called? The Empowered palette. I actually worked with OFRA when this launched. It was so much fun and I just thought it was such a perfect like sponsorship to do because it was for a green palette. But yeah, it's this green palette. It's a really nice palette. It just doesn't have enough depth when it comes to the green for me, which is why it's landing fairly low. But besides that, it's a really nice palette. I really did like the two mattes that it has, and this shimmer is absolutely beautiful. I did wish that these shimmers were a bit easier to pick up and, you know, kind of popped a little bit more. But it is overall still a really nice palette, and if you're someone who likes your greens but likes it more of a softer kind of almost not there, but almost of a softer kind of a wearable everyday kind of hint of green on your eyes, this would definitely be a palette I would recommend. Next up is going to be from Makeup Maniac Cosmetics. This is the Green Goddess 3 palette. This palette is a really nice palette. It didn't blow it out of the park for me, but it still gives me a nice green look, and I feel like every time I open this palette I can get one really good look that I really do enjoy. But I feel like versatility wise, that's kind of why it's landing so low, because that's kind of where it was lacking for me. But if I kind of focused on in this area with these greens, it is a really nice palette. The shimmers are a bit softer of a finish, but they're very pretty regardless. So it's overall a nice palette, and I still got to keep it around because it is a green palette, but but it didn't land super high, you know, for those reasons. Next up is Milani's Gilded Jade palette. This is one of those half and halves because we got some green in there, but we got a lot of brown. But there is a decent number of green in this palette. I got a lot of really pretty green looks. I really did like it. So hence why it's getting a bit higher, but I really did enjoy this palette, specifically the greens. Anytime I did a look kind of focused on the greens, especially with this shade right here, I absolutely loved how it looks. So it's a really nice palette, a really solid palette. I have no idea if it's still available, but this is a palette that if you're someone who only, you know, shops at the drugstore and this is still around and you could pick it up, I would say it's a great green palette to add to your collection because it does give you kind of that variety of green from kind of really deep type of green, like Christmas green, nothing too grungy, but you have a little bit of grunge here with this shimmer, which I think is very, very pretty. Next up is going to be Juvia's Place, the Rebel Army palette. This palette I wish had like one thing different, and I feel like it would have got a whole lot higher, but since for me, when I look at this quad, it's really like a one-trick pony. I get one look that I really like, and then I don't, you know, I need something else to go with it. This is really these quads, the Rebel quads, really, for me personally, what I like, they need to have another palette to really make them shine and make me enjoy using them on their own, hence why it's landing so low, but it is still a really great addition to your collection if you're someone who's wanting to add more greens and you need the depth and the grunge. This would be a great palette to get. I want to say it's like $12, $9, not too crazy expensive. You can find it at Ulta, you can get it on a sale, so it's a nice addition, but I just didn't love it alone. Next up is the Just My Luck palette. This palette is from Colourpop, and I have like a love-hate relationship with this palette because when I look at it, I really like it, but I didn't like working with this palette, especially the darker shades. I remember having a lot of issues with patching, a lot of issues with like the shadows going on, but then as I worked with them, they really just didn't look that good, or they would kind of bald away as I was blending. However, I love this shade right here. It's absolutely stunning. Mary Jane, such a beautiful green. I love that green. But as a whole, like this color story, while I do like it, it is green. Again, it's not that really grungy green. It's more of that minty type of green. But overall, it's a fun color story. I did enjoy it. I just don't enjoy working with the formula. Hence why it's landing low, but overall, it was a fun color story, and that Mary Jane really made up for a lot of its shortcomings because that shade was beautiful. Next up, this palette, this is a quad I almost didn't include in here, but I'm going to throw it in because every time I think about it, every time I read the title, I think it's a green quad, but this is the Green Tea Macchiato palette from Midas. Green tea, but when you open it, there's actually only like one green shadow. So you might roll your eyes at this and be like, you shouldn't have included that. I'm sorry, I'm including it. But anyway, this palette is a really fun, kind of a neutral greeny, very has a lot of depth to it. It's a really fun little quad. I enjoy using this mostly in addition to other quads just because, again, maybe it's just quads in general, but we're going to talk about some amazing quads here in a minute. But typically quads, I don't like using them on their own because they're too limiting or too samey, like things are too close together for my preferences. But overall, talking about the quality of this quad, it's fantastic. I really did like it. All right, moving right along. Next, we have the I Heart Revolution Tasty Avocado palette. This palette surprised me with how much I loved it, but the reason it is getting kind of low in this countdown in the grand scheme of things is because it's like a very minty green, and my love, like palettes that really touch my heart and really, you know, leave a lasting impression and make me want to go back to it are palettes that tend to be more on the grungy green side, so hence why this is landing low, but quality-wise, I thought it was a great palette. It was a tad bit repetitive with some of the shadows. I feel like you could have, you know, kind of taken a couple rows out of here by taking out the repetitive shadows and not missed it at all, but overall, it surprised me with how much I like this, and I used it recently. I think it was this green matte shade. It was a really nice matte shade. It blended beautifully. I really did like it, so yeah, surprised by how much I enjoyed this palette. Next up is going to be the little e.l.f., what is this called? Bite-size Hot Jalapeno quad. This is a cute little quad. I do remember having maybe a touch of issue with this, and I've heard other people also say they had a little bit of issue with blending out the deepest shade, but I don't remember having that big of an issue. I think it was more so like as I was working with it, it looked like it might kind of go sideways, but then I just kind of kept packing on more, not doing too much disturbing with the blending, and it was fine. So for me, this is a great little quad, and it's definitely a quad that I can get more than one look out of it that would look different and that I would really enjoy. I was super impressed with the two shimmers. I was really pleased with the variety with the two mattes. You know, there's not a whole lot of shade selection in here. However, with one really dark green and one really light green, you can get a lot of variety when it comes to doing looks. So I was happy with that. And overall, I think it's $3. Can't beat it. Okay, next up I'm going to put the Fenty Beauty, what is this called? Snap Shadow Mix and Match, oh, the Money palette, sorry. This is a little 6-pan palette that I liked, but I wish one of the shimmers had been replaced by a matte because there are 4 shimmers and only 2 mattes, and one of the mattes is brown and only one is green. So I feel like if it had been kind of, you know, played around a little bit more with the shimmer to matte ratio, I would have liked it a whole lot more. However, the mattes, I was really happy with the matte formula. I was really impressed with the shimmers. They were really pretty, and overall it's a nice little green palette. So if you're someone who likes this color story and likes more shimmers than mattes, then I would recommend it. But for me, my preferences, that's why it's landing a little bit lower in this countdown. Okay, so next we have the Dose of Colors Cutting Edge palette. This little palette right here is one of those palettes where it's almost like, is it a green palette? Because it only has the 2 greens over here. However, every time I open them, I'm like, yes, a grungy green. It's just got such a fun color story. So these shadows definitely help and accentuate the greenness in my opinion. So I'm throwing it in here, but this palette was so much fun. I'm a huge fan of Dose of Colors matte formula. It's very pigmented and very easy to work with. And then these 2 shimmers I was super impressed with. I was very pleased with how they performed, and they're so like glittery and sparkly on the lid. They're absolutely beautiful. So yeah, definitely a lot of fun with this palette, and I really did enjoy it. Next has to go to Midas Cosmetics. This is the Artistry palette volume 2. This one right here, I was so impressed with this little palette. Really did love it. This is kind of what I was hoping the Fenty Beauty palette would have been, because there's more mattes in here. There's a little bit more diversity with this red. It gives something interesting to the palette. And then the 2 mattes that are in here are different and very unique and very fun and very beautiful, you know, as you use them together or by themselves with the mattes. I just felt like I got a lot of versatility, and this gave me what the Fenty Beauty was lacking. The Fenty Beauty one was lacking. So yeah, a really great palette. I have no idea if it's still available, but if it is, I really do like this palette. Next up is DeDe Signature's The Avocado Quad. This quad, this is what a quad can do that I will enjoy doing more than one look out of it, and I will feel like I get a lot of variety out of it. Because with this palette, you got a great shimmer in here. You have a very light and bright green, dark green, and a brown that's nice and dark as well, so you can play around with those different mattes and get a lot of different type of looks without feeling like you're creating the same look over and over. I was a huge fan of this. I even created an all matte look as well with this on the lid. I was so pretty, and those in the crease, so very beautiful. So yeah, this is a quad that shows me that I can like quads on their own, even though they are smaller and it's not landing super high because of variety and whatnot. But you can do quads well for me, and this is one way they did quads well. On the heels of that is going to be a new palette from DeDe Signature. This is the Pumpkin Spice palette. And this palette is so much fun. It's got a really nice deep green. It has a gorgeous like green gold metallic. Oh, this shade is so beautiful. So metallic and gorgeous. And then this shade also has a green kind of iridescent spin to it. It's like green and gold. I don't even know how to describe this, but it's kind of like a multi-chrome-ish shadow, I think is how you would describe it. Yeah, I see hot pink. I see green. And what else do I see? Like a blue even? It's absolutely beautiful. I love it. This quad, I had so much fun creating different looks with it, either using the green with this more brighter color or that, or even I did one with just using this orange with this shade on the lid, all over the lid. And it was such a fun, like bright, like springtime type of look. I absolutely loved it. So yeah, another time DeDe Signature does it again where she can make a quad that I enjoy using more than once or twice on its own without feeling like I need to pull something into it to make it complete. So she did a great job with that as well. Next up is going to be from Endangered Cosmetics. This is the Sea Turtle palette. This is kind of like a green-blue split down the middle, but there's still enough green in here with the brown and the gold. I felt like when I open it, I think of green, so hence why I'm putting it in here. This was a fun little palette that I really did enjoy. The matte formula was really nice. There's a lot of depth in here. The shimmers were really beautiful, especially this gold. It's just so like metallic looking when you would use it on your eyes, and it's so like intense. So beautiful. I know I'm starting to touch. I always start touching as I get to my favorites, and then I'm a mess by the end of the video. But this is a great little palette. I really did enjoy it, and I love the cover as well. So yeah, landing higher. We're working our way up to the top. Next, I'm going to put the Made by Mitchell Feet on the Ground palette. This is a mammoth of a palette. It's just so big. And this is a palette, again, when you opened it, it's like, oh, you know, it's not like a super green palette because you got some pink, you got some yellow, you got some purple in there, whatnot. But again, I feel like all those shades kind of just attributes to and helps the green looks or the green eyeshadows in this palette, or at least that's how it was for me. I feel like I got a lot of really fun green looks out of this palette, so hence why I'm putting in this video. I thought it was a really nice palette. It had a lot of variety. I think I enjoyed the shimmers. I don't remember being blown away by the shimmers, but I think I remember enjoying them enough. And the mattes I remember enjoying enough. Alright, on the heels of one mammoth of a palette, we're going to do the P. Louise Worldy palette. This palette is such a mammoth. Another palette that I didn't know if I should put it in here because I was like, oh, there's not a ton of green. However, again, there's all these greens up in here, but then all up here you got the more grungy green, and down here you have a lot of like the softer grungy green. Again, I should stop explaining myself, but just something to throw it out there. I was very surprised as I was looking through my collection. I was like, okay, a lot of these green palettes have a lot of other colors in there too. But anyway, yeah, a great palette. I really did enjoy this. Her formula with the mattes, I really do enjoy. They're really nice for like that buildable type of formula if you like to kind of mix shadows together, or if you like to just work with packing on motions as opposed to really like blending them. Because I do feel like her matte formula is a bit thinner, especially the lighter shades. And then the brighter shades are just so very bright. And overall, yeah, I really did enjoy this palette. Her deeper shades I remember being a little bit more on the dry side, but they still pack a punch when it comes to intensity. There's only 3 shimmers in here. I wasn't a huge fan of them, but there's only 3 shimmers in here, and it's a huge, great matte palette. So this is a palette they definitely love doing all matte eye looks out of it, and I think they always turned out so very beautiful. Next up is going to be the Milani Poison Ivy palette. This is a collaboration with Doodles by the Bunny, and I'm so sorry my palette is so very dirty, but it's a love palette. The matte formula in here is outstanding. I absolutely love Milani matte formula. Super, super impressed with it, and then the shimmers are also really nice. There's one glitter that actually I can say like at this moment to date is the one glitter that I don't mind working with. I was super impressed with how easy it was to like wear, how easy it was to apply, and how easy it was to take off without having to worry about glitter in my eyeballs. I was very impressed with that, and overall, yeah, it's just a really nice palette. It's a really nice green palette that gives you a little mix of grunge, it gives you a little mix of neutral, it gives you the depth that I like in my looks, so overall, a fantastic palette. Doodles by the Bunny and Angela did a fantastic job. Alright, we're getting towards the top. All these palettes, I just love them, so I don't know what to tell you. But anyway, next is going to be the Blush Tribe. You guys remember Blush Tribe? This is the Paulina palette. This was a collaboration with Paulina. This palette almost didn't make it in because there's only, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4 greens. However, again, it's one of those palettes where, you know, it's like a two-tone palette that I talked about in an exclusive video if you want to see that. I'll link it up here. But still, I decided to include it. I love Paulina. I love the palette she created, and this palette was so much fun. The types of looks that I got are definitely very beautiful. They still have the green that I love, but it was definitely a little outside of my typical kind of eye looks that I tend to go for because it has those pinks and purples to pair with the greens. It was just a whole lot of fun, and I remember the formula being really nice, the shimmers being outstanding, and the mattes being really fun and easy to work with. So a great palette, and I love having it in my collection. Next up is going to be the Odin's Eye Erd palette. This is a fun little kind of grungy green, but not overwhelming on the green, especially because they paired this really deep kind of purpley, I don't even know what you call this. It's like a purpley brown color in here, and when you pair that with these other colors, the looks actually didn't turn out too like grungy green. They just had a lot of grunge to them, which I thought was really fun and different, and the quality of these are outstanding. The mattes, 1, 2, 3 mattes were absolutely beautiful, so pigmented, so smooth. And then the shimmers, I really enjoyed this shimmer specifically. These were a little bit more of like the flaky type of shimmer, which I'm not the hugest fan of, but they still are really pretty. Even though I say that I'm not a fan of the chunky shadows, it is pretty once you get past the mess of applying it. After that, I had to mention the Kaleidos Futurism Sci-Fi Greens palette. This palette, again, it's one of those palettes where it's like, not too many greens, but still, it's a green palette. I absolutely love it. I love this black. It's so nice and deep and beautiful. The shimmers in here are absolutely stunning. They're so blinding, and I like that they're different. One's more green, one's just more straight gold. Yeah, this is a classic. I was so sad that Kaleidos discontinued this. I don't know if they're planning to discontinue all of these, but when the last time I went on their website looking around, this was the only one I couldn't find, besides the limited edition. But like the OG 4 that they released, this is the only one that's not available, and I'm like, why? Green is the best. Next up is going to be another Odin's Eye. This is the Cat's Breath palette. Another palette's right there borderline because it's a very like orange green, but still it has the green in there, so I'm going to mention it because I was such a huge fan of this last year in 2021. I really did like the looks that I got out of this. It was so much fun, that mix of orange with the green and the browns, and the mattes in here are absolutely stunning. So bright and vivid, so beautiful and deep. Oh, I love the mattes in here, and then the shimmers, the 4 of them, are also really pretty. I really did enjoy them. Almost super shock and formula and more like iridescent in applying it, but they're still blinding and beautiful, so overall love it. Had to place it rather high in my countdown. Next up is going to be the Glam White Dirty Martini palette. This was a fun little palette. It had a few too many like shimmers over mattes. You guys know, I say this every time. If it's ever like half and half or more shimmers than mattes, I'm always like, you could have put more mattes in it. So I'm sorry that I always say that. Just expect that from me because that's just my preference. But still a fun little palette. I created so many great looks with this. The matte formula in here is so very nice to work with. Again, so intensely pigmented, so easy to blend and mesh together. And the shimmers, while they're not my favorite to apply, they do look very pretty on the lid and they're very sparkly and whatnot. They are, again, more of that like Super Shock type of formula when you touch them. So they tend to just apply better with your finger, but I don't like using my fingers, so it's one of those type of palettes. But still, even with that little hiccup in there of not being my favorite to apply, still a really nice and very pretty palette. Okay, next up, I didn't know where to include this one, but this is the Anastasia Beverly Hills Subculture palette. The reason I didn't know where to include it is because when I open it, I'm like, there's not a whole lot of greens in there, but I feel like this is such an OG when it comes to grungy green palettes. Like this was the gateway, at least for me, it was the gateway into the grungy green palette world, that I could not put it in this countdown. So I'm putting it in this countdown. However, because it's like not super focused on the greens as much as I like, and it doesn't have like the beautifulness of the shimmers that I like when it comes to my green grungy looks, I decided to put it here because there's a lot of palettes we're going to talk about that just blow me away when it comes to, the green looks that I like. That this one, while I did enjoy the formula, I do think it's like super pigmented, super intense, so beautiful to work with, and like you need to be careful using it, that type of thing. I don't know, I've just grown since this, more palettes have come out since this that just blow my socks off when it comes to a grungy green palette. So I'm placing it here right before we get into like, oh my goodness, trying to pick the order of the next, rest of the palettes was impossible because I want to put all of them at number one. I decided to put it right here before that because it kind of owed to, like I said, my gateway into grungy green palettes is the Subculture palette. So even though I definitely feel like I've grown beyond it and don't really like think to reach for this palette or use it, or I just enjoy more green grungy looks, it's still a very nostalgic palette for me. Okay, as I said, the rest of these palettes, I wanted to put them all at number one because I love them all so much. But I had to place them somewhere, so take all of these rankings with a grain of salt from here on out because, like I said, I love all of these and want to put them all at number one. So, moving on, we have the BH Cosmetics Sweet Shop Pistachio palette. This is such a classic for me when I think of all green palettes that I absolutely love. The shimmers in here, so beautiful, so amazing. The mattes in here, absolutely loved each and every one of them. So easy to work with, so intensely pigmented, especially I remember this deep shade being so very easy to like pack it on the lid and just get so much intensity. Super, super impressed. I am sad it's a limited edition, but I am very happy to own it. And then, of course, I had to put the Colored Rain Safari Rain palette in here because grungy greens, oh my goodness, this palette was limited edition, no longer available anymore, but I love it so much, and every single look that I've ever created with it, I absolutely adore. Matte formula, outstanding. The shimmer formula, outstanding. So very beautiful. It's just so like metallic and so intense on the lids. Absolutely love it. Of course, I had to put the Melt Cosmetics Gemini palette in here. Again, a little surprising that there aren't that many greens in here when you think about it, but still, it's a grungy green palette, so we're putting it in here. And this was, again, one of those intro palettes to me when it came to grungy green palettes, and I absolutely loved it. Like, I remember having so much fun with the looks, and every look that I got was just so grungy. And even the neutral ones, like, I love that little bit of grunge, a little bit of, I don't know, there's something about these tones that give me a neutral look, but still make it a kind of grungy Katie neutral, and I absolutely love it. So yeah, definitely had to mention Melt Cosmetics. I feel like formula-wise, I like a lot of other brands before Melt Cosmetics, but still, again, kind of like a nod to the OG, I could not put this palette in my top. Okay, the palette that's on my eyes is a new palette to me. This is the Kaleidos Flower Punk palette. Look at my eyes. They're so fun. Oh my goodness. And again, with this palette, it's like only the top here is like grungy green. However, there's also the kind of the minty green down here. This palette is just so very nice. And I love the mix of like grunge with these pastels. I think it's just so fun. And I've been having so much fun exploring it and creating different type of looks. And yeah, I went all with the grunge today because I was doing this video. But yeah, super, super impressed. The matte formula, outstanding. I absolutely love it. The shimmer form is also pretty, but it's actually not my favorite to work with. Again, a little tough to pick up, but still super pretty on the eyes. Next is going to be the Give Me Glow Juicy Olive palette. This, I think, was the first palette I tried from Give Me Glow, and it's where my love of Give Me Glow started because, oh my goodness, this palette, grungy green, it's like, that's all this palette gives you, and I love it because it's just so, so beautiful. Every look you get, no matter how you mix it up, is just so green and grungy and beautiful. I love this tone, this Dirty Martini. Oh my goodness, Give Me Glow Cosmetics mattes are so nice to work with, so beautiful, so pigmented, and then their shimmers are like my perfect metallic formula. I always love them. I always love working with them. I always love how they look on my eyes. So yeah, definitely had to include the Juicy Olive palette very high in my countdown. Next up is the Whale Song palette. This is from Menagerie Cosmetics. This is such a good palette. I love it so much. It is so grungy. It's like so grungy blue and green and just very sea. Like anytime I create a look with this, I just feel like it's grunge town toward the bottom of the ocean, and it's absolutely beautiful. And the matte formula is just outstanding. Absolutely love it. The shimmer formula, not the biggest fan of, but I really did like these two. These two were a great formula. And yeah, I feel like it's just a classic for me when it comes to grungy green palettes. This is definitely a palette that I think of and I think back on it very fondly. Okay, this is a palette that I, again, split down the middle. I wasn't sure if I should include it, but we're including it. It's the Shroud and Batty Beans It's Freakin' Bats palette. This palette's got the green in it because, like, look at all this grungy green goodness, and purple. She kind of paired this one with purple, and I think it's really fun. It gives a very different grungy look to my looks when I pair these greens with the purples. I feel like every time I do a look, it's so unique and different for me, yet still really grungy and green and still very me, and just a very, like, noticeable. Anytime I create a look, it's like, oh yeah, that comes from the It's Freakin' Bats palette because it just stands out. This green, oh my goodness, it's amazing. Such a favorite of mine. I absolutely love it, as well as this. Like, this is so blinding. It's gorgeous. Like, the most blinding inner corner highlight that you can ask for, and it stays so well as well. Like, her shimmer formula, I was a super big fan of. Her matte formula, super big fan of. And this palette as a whole, super big fan of. Okay, next up, I had to give this one a high ranking. Again, kind of like a nostalgia more so, and I had to include in this video because it was green palettes, but it's the Try by Juvia's Place palette, and when I opened it, I was like, there's actually not a whole lot of greens. There's like, this, I guess you could argue that that's green, and then those, and that's it. And I was like, oh my goodness, there's not a whole lot of green in here. However, it's the Juvia's Place, a Try palette. The type of green looks that you could get from this palette were absolutely beautiful. I could not include it in today's video, and obviously I'm putting it super high because it's one of those palettes that I love so very much. All the looks that I created, so very beautiful. These greens are just so bright and just so fun on the lid, and then the shimmers in here are all blinding and beautiful. It's a palette that's no longer available, I'm pretty sure, by Juvia's Place anymore, but I'm such a fan. I'm so glad to have it in my collection, and anytime I think of a green palette, this is definitely one of the ones that pops into my head, and it's one of the palettes I always have on display behind me because I love it so much. Okay, next up, you guys are going to be a little bit surprised, but I really stuck to for this palette, the green palette. Like, what palette just trumps all others when it comes to the type of green looks that I could get from it? So I decided for this video, I'm going to swap a ranking that I did for my top palettes from 2021. You'll understand in a minute, but I'm placing the Beauty Bay Wilderness palette at number 2. Because while it's a gorgeous green theme palette, there's a lot of reds and browns and blues in here. There's really these two middle are where the green comes from. But still, when I open this palette, it's definitely a palette wilderness. I think of grungy green. I think of gorgeous greens when it comes to this palette, so I did want to include it in this video. But because it's not like a super big palette full of greens, I decided to put it at number 2, and we'll save the next one for number 1, and this will all make sense in a minute. But anyway, this is a fantastic palette, a Beauty Bay. This was my first time trying Beauty Bay, and they definitely put them on the map now as we get into 2022. I am watching for Beauty Bay's next release, or the first release of 2022, because if it's a color story I like, I know I'm gonna like the formula, because I was super impressed with the mattes and very pleased with the shimmers in here. Okay, so for my number 1, here's where it's gonna all make sense. I decided to put the Ace Beauté Tropical Vibes palette, because this palette, when it comes to gorgeous green themed palettes, this palette just has it all, and it just has my heart so much. I was like, you know what? For my green palette collection, when I rank them, I want to put this one at number 1 because I just love it so much, and it really sticks true to the green theme more so than the wilderness one. So that's why for this one, I swapped it, and this one gets number 1 in this video. I hope that makes sense. But anyway, this palette is absolutely lovely. Such a huge fan of it. I love the matte formula when it comes to Ace Beauté's palette here. It's absolutely stunning. They blend so well. They look so beautiful. Oh my goodness, like the eye looks that I got from here, I was so floored with. I absolutely loved. I played with this so very much, and I feel like I could still play in it again and not get bored. And then the shimmers, there's only 3 in here, but I was really happy with all the shimmers. Very pleased. So yes, had to give the number 1 green palette in my collection to the Ace Beauté Tropical Vibes palette. Okay, so now that I'm exhausted and so out of breath and very thirsty, that is the end of the video. Those are all the green themed palettes that I have in my collection. As best as I could tell, going through my collection this morning and going over these palettes the last couple days, trying to figure out where to place them and whatnot in the ranking, This is my ultimate, I guess you could say the ultimate green palette collection ranking video that I have on my channel and that is currently up to date. So I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I figured I'd better fit this video in now before I start getting more green themed palettes, and then I'll never do this video. So we'll do it now, and I can revisit it and maybe at the end of the year, maybe next year, and you know, add in the new palettes that I get from 2022, because you guys know I'm always picking up green palettes because I just can't help it. I love green palettes. So yeah, that's going to do it for today's video. Thank you guys so very much for watching. Once again, thank you to Ana Luisa for sponsoring this video. And again, if you want to do any shopping for Valentine's Day or just to shop the sale, because for me personally, I'm always someone who shops sales. I hate buying stuff when there's not a sale going on, so I always take advantage of sales. If you want to do that, my link is down below in the description box, and it just lets them know any traffic I send their way. So yeah, with that said, I'm over on Instagram. I'm LadyKatie92. I like to post up close eye pictures, fun reels, makeup tutorials, all that sort of thing. So yeah, if you want to follow me over there, that's where I am. And with all that said, I will see you guys very soon in my next video. Bye guys.